It was about 4 years ago when Daniel Cormier was sitting at a press conference dais, not unlike this one, and he said, "Give me Ryan Bader. Give me the easiest guy in the division." 4 years later, it's 2019, and Ryan Bader is the Bellator light heavyweight champion. He's the Bellator heavyweight champion, and he is the Bellator heavyweight World Grand Prix champion. I'm Marc Raimondi from MMAfighting.com, alongside Dave Doyle from MMAfighting.com. Bellator 214 just wrapped, and Ryan Bader knocked out Fedor Emelianenko very quickly in the first round of the finals of said Bellator heavyweight tournament. Dave, let's start with Bader, because it feels like he has become one of the bigger and more important names in Bellator right now. He's up here a few minutes ago holding 3 titles, gold around his waist, gold on his 2 shoulders. Has everything changed about the way that people should think about Ryan Bader now after what he's been able to accomplish?
Absolutely. Look, Ryan Bader's 5-0 in Bellator now. All 5 of those victories have been over. Every name on that list is a legit opponent. He came into this, he was on a pretty decent run. He's on this 12 of 13 overall now,
Right.
going back to when he was in the UFC. If you don't recognize Ryan Bader as one of the very top fighters in the sport at this stage of the game, I don't know what to tell you anymore.
Went through this tournament, Dave, and in the first round he knocked out King Mo Lawal in the first round. Didn't get touched. Second round he dominated Matt Mitrione over 3 rounds. Was barely touched. I think he was maybe. I don't think he was really punched at all on the feet in that fight. And then comes in here to the Forum in Inglewood, California, and he knocks out Fedor Emelianenko. It's hard to wrap a brain around where Ryan Bader would be right now if he were in the UFC. Is in some ways you feel like Bader is an example of guys who were maybe contenders in the UFC, who were fighting for a title shot, kind of just another one of the guys, another one of the cogs in the wheel. Hey, you can go to Bellator, or you can go somewhere else, and holy man, you could really make a big name for yourself elsewhere.
Sure. You know what? If you took the same group of guys that Bader has just beaten over the last couple of years in here in Bellator, and somehow if you transpose that into the UFC, people would be demanding that Bader fight for a title right now.
So the fight itself was over very quickly. Was not really the way that many saw it going. Even if you had Ryan Bader winning, most people didn't have him winning in that way. Were you surprised about how he finished it?
I mean, no. Look, yes, I was surprised. I didn't think the first time that Bader touched Fedor that the fight was going to end. And honestly, maybe it's best that Fedor steps away at this point, because he had that wonderful run beating Frank Mir, beating the semifinal against Chael Sonnen, but this kind of showed where he stands against the real elite in their prime guys now.
Do you think it is time? Do you want to see Fedor go? I guess Scott Coker confirmed earlier tonight that was the last fight on his Bellator contract. Is there anything else that you want from Fedor at this point, or are you okay with him?
There's nothing left for him to accomplish. I'm guessing he probably doesn't want to leave on this note. And as I noted in the pre-fight show, maybe he goes to Japan or Russia and does like a little victory lap. But other than doing that for the sake of going out on a high note, I don't see any reason to see him fight any further.
It's a tough thing, I guess, because you lose to Ryan Bader, who is no slouch. It doesn't necessarily mean that your time is up, because he did have like those wins, like you said, against Mir and Chael Sonnen. There are certainly fights that Fedor can still win. I guess it's just a question of whether or not we want to see him try to do it against guys who could, knock him out and do damage at his age, 42. Moving on now to the co-main event, Dave. Another first round knockout. Henry Corrales surprisingly beats Aaron Pico, the top prospect, in one of the most action-packed 67 seconds that you're ever going to find in MMA. It was
Absolutely.
A roller coaster, topsy-turvy, minute and 7 seconds. Surprised by how that fight finished.
Well, I'm going to go back to our preview show yesterday. I said that Pico would draw Corrales into a firefight and it would be exciting. I just got who was going to win it wrong. So the way the fight developed in and of itself, I wasn't surprised by. Sure, I was surprised that Corrales managed to catch him. But I think, we have to keep in mind that Aaron Pico has been under an intense spotlight from the very first moment. Debuted at Madison Square Garden. Every fight of his is an event. He's still only 22 years old. We're still watching him grow up as a fighter. And if he took the same fighter and he was just a guy working his way up on regional shows, this would just be someone who was learning along the way. So I wouldn't write him off by any stretch of the imagination. This was just a young mistake. He got caught. Maybe he fell a little bit more in love with his boxing. Maybe he needs to show a little more of his wrestling game. But wouldn't read too much into him losing the fight.
Henry Corrales is a veteran now. He's won 5 in a row. He's on the cusp of getting a title shot in the featherweight division. Does he get the title shot next? And did Henry Corrales' stock raise in your eyes tonight with that win?
I mean, how can it not?
Yeah.
He got rocked. He took that uppercut to the jaw. It looked like Pico was going to rush in and finish him. Showed great composure, getting back to his feet, getting back in the fight. Basically saw everything you'd want to see out of a title challenger, right? So, when he lost a few fights a few years back, maybe that was a little bit too early. But he came up here and said, I went to the MMA lab, I changed, made a commitment to become a better fighter, and you saw it here tonight, so maybe you do give him a title shot.
Has not actually lost a fight since making that move to the MMA lab 5 fights ago. One last thing on Pico, Dave. He came up here a few moments ago to the post-fight press conference, which he didn't have to do as the loser. I think he was the only person who lost the fight who did come up to the press conference, and it was a very classy defeat, no excuses. And he made an interesting point, and I wanted to run this one by you. Basically what he was saying is that he still wants a top 5 opponent next, and he was asked by ESPN's Brett Okamoto, are you really doing yourself a service by asking for another top flight opponent in Bellator, or should you kind of dial it back a little bit? As a 22-year-old kid, he's still very young in his career, and Pico said, if you give me another opponent who is more of my experience level, you're going to need a hefty hospital bill, because I'm going to hurt that person. What are your thoughts on that mentality? Is that the correct mentality to have? Do you think he's correct?
Look at the raw talent that he has, the raw skills that he has. Just let's play this hypothetical. If you took Aaron Pico and put him on up against one of the guys who was on the undercard tonight in the prelims, it would be no real good for anyone. And of course, there's he got caught. That happens in this sport, and showed tremendous maturity just coming back out here and facing the music and not offering any excuses. And if he wants to take another tough fight again, then let him take it.
I guess we'll have to look to see if he does implement this wrestling game that we know he has. He was almost an Olympic caliber wrestler. We have not seen it. We've only seen him brawl. It's like he's almost fallen in love with the striking and with the knockouts, because he's capable of doing it, but he also is capable of getting knocked out, as we saw tonight. Speaking of wrestling, Jake Hager, amateur and professional wrestling. Jake Hager, the former Jack Swagger in WWE, made his pro debut in mixed martial arts tonight, beating J.W. Kaiser by first-round submission. J.W. Kaiser is a guy, he's 1-1. He is a journeyman of all journeymen. He's had a ton of amateur fights. He's like your consummate Midwestern journeyman type guy in combat sports. Were you impressed by Jake Hager's win, or is this a thing that you want to kind of wait and see?
So this is, if we're going to continue with the wrestling analogies, this was like an old school Superstars of Wrestling Saturday morning squash match, right? It is what it is.
Are you saying J.W. Kaiser is like a Barry Horowitz or a Mike Sharp?
Barry Horowitz, Johnny Rodz, one of those guys.
Fair.
Sure. That said, I mean, everything you wanted to see out of Hager in terms of just everything was solid. His fundamentals were solid. His takedown was good. The way he improved his position, went for an armbar first, didn't quite get it. Still had the herewithal to stick with it and go to Plan B when Plan A wasn't there. So, I wouldn't read too much in beating J.W. Kaiser. No disrespect to the guy, but we did see what we wanted to see out of him. What I liked more about Hager was just his attitude all week. He didn't. This is a guy who was a big name in the WWE, and he did not act like he was a star. He did not act like he was something special. And if we wanted to, think about how far can he go with the sport, I think his attitude actually meant more than what happened in the cage tonight.
What do you do if you're Bellator as far as the advancement of Hager? Because maybe we found out some things about him tonight. We found out that he can at least beat guys who are of similar experience level as far as pro fights go. What do you do next? I mean, you can't throw him into a fight with a top heavyweight just yet. Of course, nowhere near it, right?
I think you find a couple more J.W. Kaisers to see how exactly
a few more enhancement talent.
Enhancement talents.
Sure.
This isn't Aaron Pico we're talking about here. I think you got to take him along a little more slowly and a couple easier fights to ease his way into this thing.
Moving on, Dave, down the main card to the Juan Archuleta versus Raheem Bandejas fight. Archuleta won by unanimous decision. The right call, in your opinion, the right choice by the judges
Yeah, I
to give
thought so. I
Archuleta.
had it. I had a 29-28 for Archuleta as well. I had him in taking the first round. Thought both of the last 2 rounds were close. Could have gone either way. So I have no complaints with that one. I felt that fight lived up to its hype. Good, solid back and forth scrap.
Archuleta is 22-1. Is he a guy that gets title shot at some point, maybe in 2019?
Why not?
In possible multiple divisions.
Multiple divisions. You know, I mean, he came down and that wasn't a scrub he was fighting at 135. You know, that was a guy who had a good head of steam of his own. So kind of feel like he can call his own shot here.
Also had Adel El Tamini win in his Bellator debut on the opener of the main card, flanked by Chris Pratt. Also trains with Wiz Khalifa. Very interesting card. Had R-Truth walk out, rap out Jake Hager. Was there anything else on the Bellator 214 card, Dave, that you wanted to point out as interesting that you thought?
Well, I mean, I got to be blunt about this. AJ Agazarm just fell flat in his face, pretty much. And for something that was supposed to be a really hype debut, and maybe a little less attitude from that guy and a little more working on the stand-up, because he did not look like, Bellator has a lot of those blue-chip prospects. He did not look like someone whose name belongs on that list. Anything else you saw, Mark?
Well, I have to shout out our boy Thor Skanky. What a fantastic post-fight scrum. So far in 2019, the best post-fight scrum that I have seen. I don't know if that will hold up or not since it's only January 26th, but we'll see how it goes. But I do recommend watching that. He is a very interesting gentleman. His name is Thor Skanky. I mean, what else do you really need to know about that? He goes on a little bit of a tangent about that. Anyway, I think we're going to wrap it up here. For Dave, I'm Marc. Stay tuned to MMAfighting.com for all of your Bellator 214 post-fight coverage, including that Thor Skanky scrum. You should give it a watch.